Hi folks, this is just a follow-up video really to the one about Hitler and the early problems I mentioned in that about the beginning of what was the Weimar Republic. What you had was I mentioned in the last video that the World War I ending with the Treaty of Versailles and how it affected Germany meant that the start of the 1920s was very, very bad if you were a German. So you had things like the Ruhr occupation, where Germany couldn't afford to pay its reparations payments laid out in the Treaty of Versailles. You've also got hyperinflation, which I touched on was a major issue. Now, at this point in time, I'd also mentioned that Adolf Hitler had been basically asked to spy on what was become the Nazi Party, and he begins to take a prominent role in this. Now, if you look at the 1920s in Germany, the start of the 20s, very, very bad for Germany. The end of the 20s, very, very bad for Germany. And the middle of the 20s, Germany looked as though it was picking up. So we're going to deal with this as best we can in this video. We're going to pick it up with the Munich Putsch. And what had happened was Hitler and the Nazis had been a growing threat in Germany, and what they were doing was they weren't nationally known, but Bavaria, they were locally known. Bavaria was a state, and they were growing their power in Bavaria. So if you ask someone in Berlin about Hitler, they'll probably, you could forgive them if they never heard of him. But in Bavaria, they were beginning to make a bit of a noise. And think of it like almost like an American system, where you've got a country, Germany, big country, and then it's divided into a number of states. Bavaria was quite an important state. It was home to Munich, and the leader of Bavaria was a man called Gustav von Kahr, and Gustav von Kahr was well aware of Adolf Hitler causing these problems for him. So his plan was to keep Hitler as close as he could, so keep your enemies close, keep your friends close but your enemies closer. So he said, I'll keep Hitler as close as I can, and then when needs be, and he's sort of under control, I'll just cast him to one side. So von Kahr plotted a meeting to take place in a beer hall called the Burger Braukeller in November of 1923. And he invited a who's who of right-wing politicians in Bavaria at that time, including the leader of the Bavarian army and including the leader of the Bavarian police. And Hitler got wind of this, and it was to talk about almost like a takeover, and Hitler was not happy that he hadn't been invited. So what he decides to do is he decides to stage a takeover. So during the meeting, with von Kahr on stage and flanked by the leader of the Bavarian army and the Bavarian police, Hitler comes in, he fires 2 shots in the air, and he proclaims a national revolution has begun. He then took von Kahr, the leader of the Bavarian army and the leader of the Bavarian police, into a side room, pointed his pistol in the air to them, and basically said, do you support me? I've got 4 bullets left in here, 1 for each of you and then 1 for me if you say no. Now this guy's just holding up a who's who of powerful people in Bavaria, so they naturally said, yes, we're with you, Hitler. And he went out and gave the impression to a beer hall that was being held hostage by the stormtroopers, yeah, these guys are with us, the national revolution begins now, we're going to do a march. And what happened was, the march was to take place to the city centre, the Odensplatz, but it was poorly planned, and the telephone and telegraph wires weren't cut, and basically calls of aid that there's been a hostage situation and there's a shootout in the streets, and Hitler dislocates his shoulder during this, runs away, and he and other leading Nazis were arrested to be put on trial. Now Hitler was put on trial, and the trial attracted publicity, and it's the whole no such thing as bad publicity belief, where Hitler went in, he's guilty of treason, you can get killed for treason. You would have expected a really pretty big prison sentence for it, I would say. And when he's in there, he's got the media covering the trial, he's got a courtroom full of media, judges listening to him, and he turns it into a show trial where he basically says that about the grievances he has with the country, the problems Germany faces. He talks about the Treaty of Versailles. He says that, like, if people steal from you, is it not right to steal it back? And he positions himself as a martyr, someone who had been punished for his beliefs. And he got a lot of positive press coverage for this, and the judges in his trial were even listening to him and agreeing with him. So when he got his sentence, it was actually 5 years, but it was reduced, told it would be 9 months on parole for basically good behaviour, and a 200 gold marks fine that wouldn't be a problem. And Hitler went to jail, and it was Landsberg Castle, and it was a hotel really, where he had as many visitors as he wanted. He could dictate Mein Kampf, and he has this moment of clarity when he's in there that he can't take power by force anymore. So he's going to try and do it by the legal means. So when he actually did get power, his supporters used the term the legal one, because he'd done it via the system. So when Hitler came out of jail, what he finds is that Germany's actually on the up. The party was actually banned by the government when he was in jail, but this ban was lifted when Hitler was released. But he struggles, and the Nazis struggle to attract members, because there's a guy called Gustav Stresemann who came in. Basically, he's a foreign minister. He had been chancellor and hadn't worked out, and he's making a lot of deals that will make Germany better. So the mid-1920s look good. For example, the Dawes Plan was his key one, where American bankers would loan money to Germany, where Germany could, rebuild their economy and pay off the war debts they faced for the likes of Britain and France. And then when Germany's got their money back, they'd be paying America back as well, but also Britain and France would be able to pay America back because they had debts to them. So it was win-win if you were an American. So German wealth and prosperity was dependent on America and these American loans that were signed into this Dawes Plan by Stresemann. Other things that happened was there was a series of treaties, like the Locarno treaties, signed that guaranteed European borders. Germany was negotiated into the League of Nations. German business was picking up. They weren't out of depression, but the signs were that they were getting better. Germany became almost like an Amsterdam or an Ibiza as well, where it became a party destination for people to go to. And this was where they could, it was because Germany had a freedom of speech going on. So there was a freedom of speech, and there was great parties at that time. It had a very liberal attitude towards sex, hence the Amsterdam comparison, and it encouraged a lot of authors and poets and such, because of these liberal attitudes, to go there. So Germany seemed to be on the up. Arts, literature were very popular and smiled upon. Now, if you contrast this with the Nazis actually were waning in popularity. In 1924, May Reichstag election, they had 32 seats. Another Reichstag election in December of 1924, 14 seats. And by 1928, before the Depression would hit, they had 12 seats. But what the Nazis critically did was they kept their rallies going, and they kept trying to grow their party through numerous movements. And Hitler himself strengthened his control and grip of the party. And you can actually see, even though the Nazis weren't winning seats, their membership for the party increased from about 27,000 members in 1925 to approximately 100,000 by 1928. Now, Stresemann was the most able of German politicians, and he himself said that the position in Germany was like tap dancing on the edge of a volcano. In other words, it's not good, really. It could go wrong at any minute. We could have fallen back into it. We are not aware of this disaster that lies just beyond us, and we seem to be almost blind to it. Stresemann suffered a massive heart attack, and then the Wall Street crash happened in America. Now, with the crash happening, this meant that America was going to stop its loans. So if you imagine Germany as a bathtub filling up gradually with water, which is representing recovery, America had to stop their loans because of the Wall Street crash and the depression that hit them. The chain was yanked, and basically everything just goes out of Germany, and Germany's back to stage one, back to how they were at the start of the 20s. So you've got massive unemployment. You've got people who are homeless. You've got people relying on charities. everybody in Germany's been affected by this in a bad way. And the politicians, without Stresemann, who was their best one, looked absolutely terrible. Their options were print more money, but we'd already had hyperinflation before, so that wasn't going to happen. So they raised the taxes, and the idea was we can use this money to help the needy. But what they did is, the people who were just getting by then had to pay more taxes, and it hurt them, and it hurt their business as well, their businesses as well. So more businesses closed down, creating more unemployment. People who had their taxes raised couldn't afford their lifestyle, so more people became like out of house and home then as well. So the government was like, okay, we'll basically reduce public officials, the public sector's wages. But then these people who've been getting by in the public sector, then they struggle and they hit, and they face the depression even worse than they had before. So there's more people being affected. So as a last ditch, they decided we're going to stop unemployment benefit. But that was when it was needed most. So it made the country, the country's politicians look terrible and helpless. So with the government looking weak, and Germany operating a system which basically meant that whatever percentage of the votes you got, that would be your percentage of seats, meant they couldn't have a strong government. So they had a coalition, and the coalition, where there lots of government parties were forming together to run Germany, were just dropping out left, right and centre because nobody wanted to be associated with this. So the old president Hindenburg had to take control, and what you had was the president takes emergency powers, but people are really cheesed off that start of the 20s, the spectre of losing the war hung over them. Treaty of Versailles loomed large, war debts, reparations, the Ruhr, hyperinflation, Munich Putsch if you're in Bavaria. End of the 20s, we're back to square one. There was even stories at the start of people being that hungry that they were like, they ate a scabby horse in the streets. So that's how bad it was, and they're back to square one again, losing a house, losing jobs, homelessness, relying on charities and government handouts. So with people losing everything, the politicians weren't popular anyway after being blamed for the Treaty of Versailles, and then being blamed for this depression that hits again. People are looking for another answer, so nobody's trusting the old politicians. And then you've got Hitler going, well, what about me? Give me a chance. I'll give you your house back. I'll give you better than before. I'll give you bread. In other words, I'll give you food. I'll get your jobs back. Why not give me a go? You've gave all the others a go. What about me? So people, so upset with the other politicians, started to look towards extreme solutions. So there was a growth in support again for the Nazi Party and also the communists at that time. Sorry about my voice, but unbelievably I've still got this flu bug. 3 weeks now. Okay, so thanks for watching. I'm going to try and do another one if the voice holds up.